Luke Langman. Come on over, Luke. A time for war, a time for peace. Honduras, I understand a coup has just happened in that Central American country. There's war there. And in Honduras, Luke had a life-transforming experience. Come on, Luke. Welcome. It's an honor to meet a young man like yourself, a farmer, and took your science degree in agriculture down to Central America, to Honduras. Well, sit down.
Thank you.
It was a project of developing or improving the quality of the bean product.
Yes, Central Americans love their beans, and so do I. And so I went down there to help them to upgrade some of their varieties that they have, as well as other farming practices like soil preservation and irrigation, things like that.
But that's not all that happened down there. Your life was radically transformed as a result of that visit.
Yeah, one day in February 2001, I was asked by Doris, who was the nurse with World Vision in that area, to give her a ride up to a dental clinic they were going to run up in a town called Vallecillo. And so I agreed, and so Doris and two young nurses and an older woman and I loaded up a Land Rover with some belongings and with the dental supplies, and we headed up to this small rural village in the mountains of Honduras. And on the way there, we stopped, and apparently we were giving the older woman a ride home, and she began to weep as we arrived at her house. And so I asked Doris why was she crying, and Doris told me that she had just lost a 4-year-old son with a heart problem in the Yoro hospital. And so things became solemn. And so when we got out of the car, a man approached our vehicle, and apparently he was her neighbor. And so he opened up the back of the Land Rover, and he pulled out a cardboard box, which in it contained the body of that young boy wrapped in a blue hospital sheet. And so I didn't realize that we were transporting this mother and her dead child back home from the hospital. So I was stunned. So we carried on up to her small, modest mud house. And around every home in Honduras is a barbed wire fence. And so we came to this barbed wire fence, and I looked at the man who was carrying the box, and he looked at me. And so I passed through the fence first, and I held out my hands, and he laid the box with the boy in it in my hands. And everyone passed through the fence, and I gently put the box back into this man's hands, gently. And we head on up to the house. Neighbors arrived. Everyone started crying instantaneously. And later on, I found that this woman had lost both her husband and 2 children and their home in 1998 during the Hurricane Mitch. And now she had lost another child, and she had 3 remaining. And that story impacted me. I realized how fragile life is, and I realized how sacred life is, and what poverty, how it plays into every area of those people's lives, and really motivates me it stirs within me a desire to change that.
You were just singing about a time for this, time for that, taken directly out of the wisdom literature in Scripture, the book of Ecclesiastes. And what time is it right now? What should we be doing right now in order to serve God and serve people?
I think it's a time for action, because to be advocates here in Canada for Canadians and for Americans, a lot of the time extreme poverty is not right in front of us, and we live our lives from day to day, and we have problems, I know, but there are people around the world who are in deep need, both spiritually and physically. And so I think action and prayer, it's a time for prayer.
And your family farms about 2,500 acres. That's a big spread here in Ontario, where 100 years ago, basically it was a 100-acre farm, maybe 200 at the most. And you're doing that with your family, your mom and dad and other family members. You're with the Canadian Food Grains Bank, that's literally donating food grains, and then the CIDA, Canadian International Development Agency, of which we're a part. 100 Huntley Street is known as an NGO, as Jim's ministry is in the Vision-led. That is his ministry to the widows and orphans who, as a result of the AIDS pandemic in Africa and so on. But the Canadian International Development Agent will double or triple
Quadruple even.
quadruple what you give. So therefore, you can actually force the government of Canada to be more generous,
Yeah.
depending on the amount of food grains that you give from your farm.
That's right.
Tell us about that.
Yeah,